They are now in the 4th time shift and it is now 1954. In an off-screen scene, John Locke has been resting his bullet wound and following Richard's instructions, so he might have stayed at the Pearl site for some hours. He would notice some things though, one being that the beechcraft wouldn't be there, and neither would the entrance to the Pearl station. He would know that he has been transported to a time before the Dharma Initiative came to the island. When he's fully rested, he would start trekking from the Pearl to the beach camp. Sawyer's group have arrived on the beach and Juliet has been checking the engine, when she says this.
Still in one piece?
As far as I can tell.
Figured it would have disappeared with the rest of our stuff.
I guess whatever we had with us when we moved is along for the ride.
This is an interesting fact. Whatever the characters were holding on to during the initial move stays for the ride. Everything from clothes to the Zodiac raft. That means that even though they are not touching the Zodiac raft when the group went to the Swan Station in the previous episode, it would still keep on flashing through time since it was part of the initial flash. So technically, unless someone destroyed it, the Zodiac raft would flash through all the time skips in the 1950s, the 80s, the future, ancient Egyptian times. It would randomly stay in the 70s for 3 years until it would vanish during the incident, with the same characters and wind up in the present in season 6. Although we didn't see it for the remainder of season 5 and 6, the rule would still apply since the Zodiac raft is still on the beach camp during the 4th time shift. And this time shift takes a long time. Sawyer mentions that Daniel Faraday was gone for 2 hours in the jungle. I do think that Faraday had figured out that they are way back in time. I also believe he went back to where the hatch was, and he would see that the crater would not be there. Maybe he spent some time digging around in the ground, then he goes back to the camp. One thing I want to mention about the 1950s map that I've made is the bend over here. I believe this is part of the eroding beach. These things can happen when land masses just slide off over time. This part is not there in the 2000s but was likely there some decades ago. This is due to something I talked about in Through the Looking Glass, with Ben's map of the radio tower and this area over here. After all, the crash site is over here and they also experienced that the beach camp was eroding and the fuselage was sinking into the sea. Miles goes out in the jungle to find a dead animal. He comes back during nighttime. I believe that this is well into the night. When Miles comes back, it's just minutes before they are attacked and the next episode starts during the morning. And I doubt that they wander around the creek for hours. So this time shift is the longest one they've experienced. While Bernard is trying to make a fire, it is our very own Hero Extra who is watching Vincent. If you followed my channel, you know who this is.
You mean like that guy there?
For some reason, this background character has always helped out a little bit more to the community than the other survivors. Such as helping Michael find Claire, setting up the medical tent for Boone's operation, running to Claire when hearing her scream, he was setting up the ping pong table, or helping with the SOS sign. Both Miles and Charlotte were out in the jungle trying to find food, so that likely attracted the attention of a group of people, 1950s others. They start shooting flaming arrows at them, which in turn causes the biggest massacre since the Purge. Seriously, let's look at all the people we lost. Including the tail, we started out with more than 70 survivors, although a lot of people died, such as Gerd Troop. If this guy had survived, he would be very valuable to the group in season 2, since he was one of the candidates, as well as one of the few survivors who knew about the Hanso Foundation. This information coming from the Ultimate Reality game.
Absolutely, I wrote a non-fiction book called The Valenzetti Equation.
About the reclusive Princeton mathematician Enzo Valenzetti and his famous theorem.
Yes.
At least that's what they say it's about. I have to confess, I can't find a copy.
Yeah, I know. I mean, first of all, it was a small printing. And allegedly, now I emphasize allegedly, Alvar Hanso bought up all the available copies. And he bought the rights to reprint.
Why would he do that?
Good question.
Your book was critical of him?
No. But as I was doing my research, I discovered that Alvar Hanso is the only guy in the world who has an actual copy of the Valenzetti equation. Now, despite repeated requests, I was categorically denied access to it. In fact, no one outside the Hanso Foundation has access to it.
And what about inside the Hanso Foundation?
Right, from what I've been able to learn, even within the Hanso Foundation, the Valenzetti equation is one of the most closely guarded secrets.
That must have made it hard for you to write the book.
And beyond that.
One thing is that these two people look nothing alike, but this guy is a stuntman. 48 survived the crash from the midsection. There were some discussions whether or not the survivors included Ethan, but I don't think so. They probably did a head count during the pilot, and Ethan didn't show up in the camp until episode 3. As late as season 4, Hurley confirms that they were in fact 48 from the crash.
48 of us survived the crash. That's not counting the tail section. They're pretty much all dead now.
So I don't think he's including Ethan. And the head count would likely start from post-explosion at the beach camp, since nobody would be able to count people at the massacre here. The tail section survivors started out with 22, although Libby does the mistake of counting Goodwin, since by adding up the numbers, how many who died and how many who were kidnapped, it all adds up to 22 survivors plus one other. In the end, 13 tailies are still living. All of them, with the exception of Bernard, didn't travel to the past. They stayed in the present with the rest of the others. That includes Cindy, the kids, and a bunch of other people that were on the list. So if we are subtracting all the people that died, and like Jin, who's in the ocean, and Locke, who's away, and Claire, who is away, and all the Oceanic 6, and the 3 survivors that died on the freight explosion, the final number of unnamed or named survivors that died at the beach camp is 17. In the next episode, Ellie says that there were 20 at the beach, but I guess she just does a rounded number. Some of the people that died includes our very own hero extra. Sullivan died. We never saw him after the rash episode, but he is dead.
Are you playing golf? Yeah.
Steve of the famous Scott/Steve duo died on the beach camp, and if the 50 others bothered to bury them, then he would be buried next to his friend, 50 years apart. The question who died first, Scott or Steve, becomes quite funny since it depends on how you look at it, and the confusion is even greater since Dustin Watchman ended up playing both Steve and Scott at various times in the show. Speaking of those two, I would love to flash back to a scene we never got, that was in the script for Raised by Another between these two and Hurley, but it never made it to the show, so this will be like an audiobook, and to me, this conversation really happened. Hurley in census taking mode, jotting down stuff as he converses with Scott and Steve on the move. Okay, so it's Scott Jenkins. Jackson. I'm Jenkins. Steve. Right. Steve Jenkins. And you dudes were on vacation in Australia. Just the two of you, together. Yep. So, safe to assume, I guess you're, you two are, married or something? Steve shares a look. Nah, we're both single, and my buddy's got serious commitment issues. No, I don't, he says, while looking back to Hurley. Just haven't found the right person yet. Somewhat uncomfortable as Steve looks at him. These two guys' relationship is still ambiguous. Gratefully, Hurley then notices Locke laying out boar pelts to dry in the hot sun.
Is this about your census?
Yeah, I thought it'd be a good idea. Get everyone's name and place of residence.
And who's checking on you?
Back to the dead. The sexy blue striped shirt girl died in this episode. She got that nickname back in season 1 due to her shirt. Craig died, and he was a valuable member of the community. He helped Claire sort out all the passports after they crashed there, as well as gathering wood. You can see him in the background here.
He was a good guy. Sorry I kept calling you Steve, man.
Another casualty was Easy Greybo's character, and he must have been a badass. He's the only survivor who walked all the way to the radio tower barefoot.
Sure.
What did you do for a living before you became Moses?
I was a doctor.
Right, of course you were.
Look at him just jotting up the rocks, leading the pack. And this guy is so consistent that when they shot the season 4 premiere, after the summer he was still going around without shoes. he has shared a few scenes with Jerome, such as here. And they look like they are great friends. And now we have a theory amongst the Lost fanbase that he and Jerome were one of the very few gays on the show, since we have a small scene in the beginning of the end where they hold hands. I wonder if they shared a goodbye, since Jerome went on with Team Locke while Greybow stayed with Jack. So sad for Greybow, because as of now he might have concluded that Jerome never made it from the barracks. One casualty was the ND survivor. She had a line in this episode.
Okay, no one is out there. No one is coming.
But the French woman said...
The French woman is missing a bloody wingnut, you know? I mean, it was all bollocks. It's a ghost story.
Beth died, who was quite the helpful member. She and Claire sorted out all the Wallace. She and Claire remained friends, I guess, since they are seen here and here.
Anyone want to venture a guess as to what Jack's going to be showing us out in the middle of nowhere?
I don't know. Stuff?
She befriended Shannon as seen here and saw the fireworks going off.
Damn it! Damn it, damn it, damn it!
She saved Shannon's ass here, since Shannon was absolutely not paying attention. Maybe Beth created a butterfly effect that led to everything else in the show. She's been in the background and even in the foreground several times. Richard died. He was also one of the ones that frequently showed up in scenes. Just see the show and he's around in the background a lot. One of the younger ones on the show, only 21 years old, and he was one of the many helpers at the raft. He was played by Brian Sato and showed up here at Lost TV as Asian Cowboy. Maisha Ardito's character also died, one of the characters who was always sporting like great hair.
Locke found a hatch in the ground, about a half a mile from here. We left to blow it open so that we could hide inside.
Charlie! You okay?
They know back yet?
No.
And she was friends with Joanna, it seemed. Both were absolutely shocked by Locke's knife throwing skills. And then you have something I never considered a mystery until it was brought up here, you know, in between big mythological stuff like who is Jacob and what is the smoke monster.
People often talk about the hair and makeup on Lost and the fact that this cast looks so gorgeous, really.
I was an air steward. Now I flew for 4 years myself. Now hold on 1 second. Now, how?
Who does their hair? I want to know. This takes me hours.
As for everybody's hair, there is one of the socks, one of the people that you don't see often, was a hairstylist. Her name is Marjorie.
Marjorie, yeah.
And she has a little salon set up behind the kitchen that you don't see often.
In fact, she was actually in a hairstyling competition in Sydney, so there was an entire suitcase full of hair products that was on the plane with her. Unfortunately, that suitcase survived the crash, so she has another 2 or 3 years worth of hair products.
I know that they are joking around, but if this is that tent behind the kitchen, then this woman, played by what looks like Lisa Romano, is Marjorie. She's seen here talking to our hero extra as well as joining him on the SOS sign, so maybe she's a different hero in her own, making everyone look absolutely smashing. And maybe she acquired even more hair products. Remember that Claire couldn't find a hairbrush?
Hey, you haven't found a hairbrush in there, have you?
No, sorry.
I must have looked through 20 suitcases. I can't find one. It's weird, right? When you think that everyone packs a hairbrush. Whoa.
Maybe Marjorie raided all the suitcases before she found her own, and since she already had those hairbrushes, she decided to go all in and help every single survivor. I would also say that the show does a great job by keeping things consistent. For instance, with who stayed at the beach and who went to the caves, or when Locke and Jack split up in season 4, so many of them pop up all the time, often wearing the same clothes in several episodes. and I advise for future rewatches just to pay attention to some of them and try to track them. The same people pop up all the time, either in group shots or when building a raft or trekking to the radio tower, to mention some scenes. Several of these background midsection survivors show up in the Flash sideways too, during the plane scenes in the season 6 premiere. That's neat. So I must say I was very happy with the use of the background cast.
Come on, he's dead. Come on, you want to be dead too? Come on. There's nothing you could have done. We gotta go now.
Sawyer and Juliet hide in the jungle near the creek. I believe this is the same creek that's been close to the beach camp all this time, the one flowing out of the cave area. A young Charles Widmore finds them along with 2 others labeled Mattingly and Cunningham. Locke kills Mattingly and greets Sawyer and Juliet.
James? Juliet? Nice to see you.
One thing that must have happened off-screen during this night is related to the Zodiac Raft. Remember how everything that was part of the initial move travels along the ride? In the last episode they were at the Swan and came back and the Zodiac Raft was still there in the same spot on the beach. The next time flash in the next episode goes directly to 2004, during season 1. Shouldn't the Zodiac Raft suddenly pop up on the beach during a time when everyone lived on the beach and they're all working on the raft? Yes, it should. Therefore, something must have happened to the Zodiac Raft during the time shift. Someone had to move it. When the 1950s others stormed the beach camp, they had to have seen the Zodiac Raft, a futuristic piece of machinery that they must have stolen. Let's add in the theory that some of them stayed behind on the beach camp to ditch all the bodies or bury them, and spent the rest of the night and morning figuring out this thing. If they managed to make it work, they likely sailed to a different part of the island. The others wouldn't have much time to use it, since it would flash away during the next time shift. Next episode will be bigger and more mythological, since we're gonna explore the 1950s at the island, which includes the US Army's time there, as well as the backstories of Charles Widmore and Eloise Hawking,